and we just really want to show our appreciation by sharing with you just a little bit about what that curriculum work meant for us in our own educational knowledge base that we can then share with our students. So Cheryl, could you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure. I feel like I learned so much from doing this project along with Guy Weston and Neshea and the teachers from Westampton. One thing that I learned a lot about while I was creating lessons was the role of the Quakers, especially the role of local Quaker John Woolman, who was from Mount Holly. He was so important that his work led the Quakers to abolish slavery amongst their members by 1776. And that is really important because the Quakers also supported the free people of New Jersey by selling them land and giving them mortgages when other groups would not. Another aspect of what I learned through doing a lesson on the Civil War veterans who were buried at Timbuctoo was that in New Jersey, African Americans weren't able to join a New Jersey regiment. They had to leave New Jersey and go to Philadelphia in order to serve the country to gain the freedom of the enslaved people throughout the country. And these were really big insights for me as a history teacher to learn and to be able to pass on to my students and help them understand the local and national connections that New Jersey and our area has to the greater history of the country. I know Neshea learned a lot too.
I did, and thank you, Cheryl, because I learned a lot from you. I didn't know how important that meeting was and how that led to the change with the Quakers. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and with your students. And one of the points that I really took away from the research and the curriculum is just how dangerous the time was for the groups who were living here in New Jersey, especially communities of color, be it if they were free or if they had at once run away. There were gangs of criminals who would seek people to put them into slavery. And one key person who really terrorized this area was George Alberti. Often when you see his name, it is preceded with the word notorious, because he would come in and really disrupt a whole community. And what was very insightful to me was that this was a disruption not only for people of color, but even those who were not of color, because it was dangerous. They were criminal bands, and they could theoretically take anyone who they so felt was dark enough to pass as being enslaved. They weren't following any laws or any rules. And so this was really just a constant danger and lull that people had to be under. The governments didn't do as much as they could all the time to protect the people from those like George Alberti, because even though he was arrested and tried and convicted for attempting to kidnap an infant, the governor of Pennsylvania let him free. So he did not serve his full 10-year sentence. So that was very insightful for me. In addition to how children were part of the victimization, is that New Jersey law supported slave owners in their so-called property rights by giving them subsidy and money while they were trying to institute gradual emancipation. And this subsidy and money was often tied in with taking care of or being guardians, supposedly, of young minor African-American children who at one time they were enslaved and their parents were enslaved, but with gradual emancipation, that is how the so-called slave owners were able to recoup their money, and they were being supported by the government. So that was very insightful to me, and just the connection that has with child services and so forth, and how it all tied in together, because it was, being alleged that these children were being neglected. So then they had to be taken care of, and whoever took care of them would need compensation. So that was very, very interesting. So this, along with many other facts, are some of the items that we share with our students.
JoAnn Donnelly, a teacher at Westampton Middle School.
Hi, Jennifer Perry, Social Studies and Language Arts teacher at the middle school.
And Cristina Burrows, Social Studies and Math at the middle school.
We were approached by the Timbuctoo Advisory Committee. I happen to be a member, and Guy Weston was very instrumental on the committee of getting us a grant. And so the idea was really to spread the information about what Timbuctoo was and what it meant to the area, and really to just the history of American history, African American history, but American history too. So we were tasked with coming up with the middle school curriculum, and we worked together. We worked part of the time, we worked in school, part of the time on our own to put it together.
And it tied in nicely with what we happen to teach in our 5th and 6th grade curriculum, particularly in our district, with as it ties into our ancient civilizations. So it was a nice opportunity for us to be able to consider how we really would implement and use it in our units. And then we were able to collaborate a little bit with what the teachers at Rancocas Valley did, and kind of see how eventually it would transition into how they might be able to use it, and then build off of it with what they were planning to do.
Yeah. I mean, the word Timbuctoo actually was a city in Mali, and in Africa, still is. And so we do study ancient civilizations, and so it was a really nice link from the past to the present, and actually to the real present for the kids who live here in the community, to have a sense of something that, wow, this happened in this community, and this settlement was here, and the people lived here, and they had lives, and they accomplished things, and so forth.
And didn't even know. And and that's what's been really interesting as they start to learn about it. We haven't had the opportunity to fully teach it to them yet. Now that the unit is completely done, but as they're starting to learn a little bit about it, it's exciting to think about how we're going to be able to present it, and eventually hopefully get them here and really see a piece of history right down the road from where they live.
First of all, quite a bit of brainstorming, really just to come up with sequential activities to a unit. You have to make them engaging, interesting for the grade levels that you're teaching. And I think what we've created really is a curriculum that can be used, I would really say 5th through 8th. I think you could even take it into 5th grade and use it. And we wanted to make it flexible enough that a teacher could look at it and say, okay, I can do this, maybe I'll change that. So it wasn't, you didn't have to, it's spelled out, but yet I think it allows for a lot of flexibility for an educator. So, but I would really, honestly, it's the ideas first. That's the hard part, to figure out how to put this, how to take all of this information and create something that's logical, something that is interesting and makes sense to a 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old student, because that was our focal point. We weren't looking at the high school level as much. So, and
then to begin with what was presented, I think, to you initially, and then certainly to us, with what was available, as far as the history, and doing our own research a little bit to see how that could tie in to our standards and our curriculum. And then I think something that we're all good at, because we all, as we mentioned initially, are teaching across different subject areas, it was important to us to make it valuable to really anybody in education. So many of the activities that we developed are cross-curricular.
Cross-curricular, yes.
And so we didn't come up necessarily with a specific lesson plan, do this first, do this second, do this third. It really is something that, like JoAnn said, anybody can, get their hands on and really apply to their students' levels, to their subject area. And
right, and the advisory committee itself, the people, I just myself got on it a few years ago. I mean, they have a wealth of information and they keep collecting and finding things, and so they had a lot there to use, and we just had to figure out how to filter that and make that work for what we felt was, you know, important for students. So I joined the advisory committee. I think they were looking for educators at the time, and I like history. And I think local history is very fascinating because it's right there, it's happened, it's like you're walking in the footsteps. And so these ladies too were willing to come on board so we could work together on it, and because they also teach social studies, and I honestly feel like you don't even have to be a social studies teacher to be interested in what happens. I mean, the things that happened here set the stage for what happens next, and so forth and so on, and our understanding of people's lives and history here of this county. It's been positive across the board. Anybody who's heard about it, they've asked questions. And the kids, honestly, for the little bit that we kind of as a teaser in a way have talked about, I think they're more familiar, and they know when they say, especially because there's a sign here now on, they're like, oh yeah. And so you start talking about it and what's happened already. Not for nothing, unfortunately, the pandemic last year kind of interrupted the progression of things. We're expecting this year we actually will be able to fully implement the curriculum, because whether we're all virtual or not, we have more of a, what's the right word? We're on a regular course now of some type. Yeah. Last year was just like, whoa, we have to go.
And so it's nice now that we, you know, since curricularly we do, you know, we study anthropology, and we, you know, we've always introduced that. Now we have something very specific that, you know, and archaeology, we can now tie it very directly to something. Yeah. So I think as far as our students go, it's either a reaction of shock, because they really still don't know that it's here, because maybe they live on a different side of town, or there's a kid like today when we all had to present in our Zooms that we would not be in office hours this afternoon because our district was kind to give us a professional day to be able to come. They were like, oh wait, I know that. I live right there, or I live across the street. And you know, so I think for them to be able to get down here and really learn the things that we want to be able to teach them is really exciting. So it's really, like you said, has been really positive.
Yeah. And I think the county, like the folks at the county, just linking in eventually to be able to link all of these historical sites. I mean, it would be great in the future to be able to say we don't need to take a class trip out of Burlington County, to have it right here and be able to visit these places. And so, I mean, obviously it takes money, it takes time, but it's definitely, I think, a good step forward.